Digital Marketing Radio, episode 106. Can going to face-to-face events help build your digital authority?
DigitalMarketingRadio.com.
I'm David Bay, and this is Digital Marketing Radio, weekly interviews with online marketing gurus. Catch up with all the previous episodes at DigitalMarketingRadio.com.
The big interview with David Bay.
So today I'm joined by Mike Russell.
Oh, you're
Mike.
cracking me up here, David.
The man with the loudest clap in the world. Everyone else had quiet claps, but you got a loud clap.
Thank you.
Well,
Wow, those jingles, man. It's taking me back to a time before even I think I was born. Those jingles were around before I was born. That's really crazy, isn't it? But
where I was born, yeah.
I love the show. I love the jingles.
Thank you very much. Well, Mike is founder of Music Radio Creative, an audio on-demand service based on the Isle of Wight. And he's also putting together a brand new event called New Media Europe to be held in Manchester in September of this year. So, Mike, to build your digital authority fast, do you think that you have to attend face-to-face industry events?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for myself and Isabella, my wife and my partner in the business, it all started with us back in, I would say, 2013, when we attended a conference that perhaps your listeners will be familiar with called New Media Expo, which takes place every year in Las Vegas. And the amount of people we met in the digital space and the internet marketing space, people who are podcasting, blogging, and doing all kinds of things online. Let me give you one very quick takeaway that we immediately realized after attending this event back in 2013 was we just launched a podcast. And the moment we got back from the conference, suddenly we had all these new reviews on the podcast from other people that we'd met at the conference who had connected with us, who had maybe taken our business card or just thought, well, I'm going to check out that podcast. And we just had a ton of feedback that way. So immediately you're meeting people, you're making strategic alliances in your industry. It might be a digital marketing conference, it might be a new media conference, it could be related to your industry, but I do think it's really powerful, yes, to answer your question.
That's incredible, because if you ask someone over email or someone on a blog to actually hopefully rate your podcast or review your podcast, a very, very small percentage of people who like your show and listen to your show regularly might do that. But if you do it face to face, then possibly it's actually getting people emotionally involved with you as a person a little bit more, and they're more likely to do it then.
Exactly, David. Don't you think we have a better connection because we've met in person?
No, joking. Yeah.
Actually, it's worse. It's worse. But yes, for anyone watching or listening who doesn't know, I have met David in person at a meetup, and I think something happens, some kind of magic happens, doesn't it, when you meet someone face to face, particularly in our industry where we're online, we're using the Google keyword tool or whatever it's called these days to do research online, or we're always delving into analytics or trying to do the next big thing, but it's always behind a keyboard, or we're using a mouse or whatever else, and sometimes I'm lucky I have my wife to work with, but sometimes you don't see another person in a day unless you're making Skype calls, and even that, it doesn't feel like the real thing, does it? So
no, absolutely. But of course you could go along to lots of other live events. You mentioned another one, but you've started your own UK podcasters events and now New Media Europe. So what was the main reason behind you wanting to actually start your own event?
Well, it came from seeing what was happening in America. I mean, as I'm sure you're aware, and your listeners, in the US, this kind of thing is huge, particularly podcasting, which is something that my wife and I are really into. We have tons of podcasts out there at the moment. And we met amazing people in the US who have been doing this, much longer than we have. I mean, my background is in traditional radio, which is why your jingles make me smile every time I hear them. So I've got the radio background and really got into podcasting. You could argue late into the game, started in 2011. But many people from the US have been podcasting since 2004, 2005, when the technology was first around. And we thought when we got back from New Media Expo, this would have been 2014 now. So a year later, we thought, well, there's not really much going on in the UK. There are a few podcasts here and there. So we thought, well, why don't we just throw a meetup in London? And we did that, and about 25 people turned up, and we had a great time. And actually, I must say, unlike the American meetups, it went on until 4 o'clock in the morning in a bar.
Wow.
I've no idea why a meetup in the UK ended up that way, but it did. And we had a fantastic time, and there was a great energy there. And we thought, yes, well, let's do some more of this. And then it went to a conference where we had the UK Podcasters Conference in 2014. And now it's expanding to New Media Europe this year. I've lost your microphone audio. I can't hear anything from your microphone. I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you. Hello?
Can you hear my audio now?
Yes.
Okay.
No idea why.
It was
Sounded
funny.
like you were saying something fantastic, and I missed it.
It was absolutely brilliant. No, that's the classic live glitches and actually doing live video. And the great thing about doing live video is it's very difficult to edit, or rather, you wouldn't really want to edit it anyway because it shows people exactly what's going on. So what I may do is edit that out of the audio recording of digital marketing radio, but obviously if people are watching the video, then they can see this
Bonus content.
interesting section. Because I'll tell you what happened initially, Mike. Your screen was locked on, and that was the reason, obviously, why it was my audio that wasn't working, so that's why your screen was locked on. And I was thinking it was a glitch with Google Hangout, just actually displaying the wrong screen because I hadn't actually clicked on screen lock as you can do inside Google Hangouts. But we got that audio back and it's all working fine now. Absolutely. So the question I did ask was about the change in brand, because obviously you started off focusing on UK podcasters, and now you've moved to New Media and this New Media Europe event that you're hosting in Manchester. So why the brand change?
So UK Podcasters, that's been our home hub and, our group of people that we really love mixing and socializing with. But we realized that there's so much more to the online space than just podcasting. It'd be like going to, a conference for traditional media and only seeing radio stations there. You go to like NAB in the US, which, it's got TV, it's got radio, it's got print, it's got the whole lot going on. So there is a lot more out there to be covering, like blogging, like online video, social media in general as well. And there's nothing really that caters for that in Europe. I mean, there are lots of mini and niche conferences. One of the biggest, I think, in the UK is Brit Mums Live for British mum bloggers. We've got social media events happening everywhere. I mean, even probably in your local town or city, you'll probably find a social media event. I know even here on the Isle of Wight, you can go to the Isle of Wight College and take a course for £99 on how to be epic on social media. So, I mean, that's happening everywhere, isn't it? But we thought, well, there's no real sort of conference hub where people from far and wide on the European continent and those further afield who want to travel over to Europe, because let's face it, it's a fantastic place to come to, London, Manchester, or anywhere else. So why don't we have one kind of hub event for that? And, UK Podcasters, it was a great experience. And I remember speaking to many people at that conference and saying, well, what do you think about sort of, maybe a slight rename there, and rather than being UK Podcasters and suggesting it's just podcasters who are in the UK, what about expanding out? And, people were quite open to that. And I think it's exciting that I know we've got bloggers coming from Spain, we've got podcasters from Sweden, we've got people in Germany and further afield as well, like the US, and even I think as far afield as probably our furthest traveler is coming from New Zealand to New Media Europe. So it's just to expand it and make it bigger and to make it a really big event for Europe. So yeah, that's what we're looking forward to. Not quite as big as Eurovision yet.
Don't put that picture in my head just before I try and think of another question.
We could have voting, it would be great.
No, I'm certainly looking forward to it. Anyway, I'm going to be there as well. So hopefully I meet a few people that are listening to Digital Marketing Radio there as well.
Yeah.
But you must have faced quite a few challenges when actually trying to put these events together. So what are the obstacles? What are the challenges you've faced when organizing your own events, and perhaps some tips that you can give to people trying to do the same, perhaps on a smaller scale, so that they perhaps won't make the same mistakes that you initially did?
Definitely. I mean, that's a really good question, David, because when Isabella and I started organizing events, we had pretty much no experience in event organization. So, we'd done bits and bobs, but nothing on that scale. So, I mean, we were really going in cold to start with. And actually, we had a great first experience, which I think is what made it great for us. And, made us think, oh, we can do this. So it was the Citizen M Hotel in London that we initially used for our very first podcasting meetup. And they were fantastic. And what we were looking for at the time, I think the hardest thing with event organization is just finding that place that can, cover all the bases and do everything you want. And, obviously the price is important, and, breaking even is really kind of essential, unless you want to be hemorrhaging money on, on these meetups. So, and we did, our plan for a long time was to just, break even as much as possible on these meetups. And it still is, if we're, breaking even, the UK podcast conference, we broke even on that. So I mean, that was a good result. So I think at first it's about finding somewhere that can accommodate you and meet your expectations. So for the hotel that we used for the first place, they had meeting rooms. We had to pay a room hire charge, and we needed to pay for the refreshments and beverages and bits like that. And we wanted to make sure people had a good experience. So the ticket price included the drinks, it included the food. Everything was done, so nobody had to worry. And I think looking after people is important to build that community up. And our experience now has, well, we've discovered that there are many places that you can get in touch with, and they'll say, well, as long as you spend a reasonable amount at the bar or on food, then you can have this room. So do your research. That's the most important thing, really.
Okay, so that's quite interesting that you just focus on breaking even, hopefully making a little bit of money, but breaking even is good, as you've said. So if that's the case, is the main goal behind hosting that kind of event to make people aware of your other brands and services?
Absolutely. Well, I think, when we've been organizing events, I've almost been applying my online marketing knowledge to the offline world, and hoping it'll work. So, for instance, obviously charging a ticket price, and then, covering refreshments or whatever you can afford to do inside the price that you estimate you're going to get. Because of course, David, that's the other unknown. You don't know how many people are going to turn up. So that's another big factor. But I mean, one of the things we've done from the start, and we both agreed that would be a good idea, would be to charge every time. Some meetups we've charged just £5 to attend. Some of them have been £25, and obviously, the conference last year was a £99 ticket. This year, I think the full ticket price is £347. So, we're working at different price points and seeing what works. But I always think that a small financial commitment kind of gives you a guaranteed amount of people to come. If you start going free, then you find that not everyone turns up. So you book with this bar or restaurant or hotel and say, yeah, we're gonna have 40 people, and then 5 turn up, because it's a free meetup. So but one thing that I've thought about doing recently with meetups, that I'm sure works very well in the online world, is giving stuff away for free. So this high value package, it's $97 worth of online marketing content, but it's for you for free as a bonus for this. So we thought maybe we could do something like that with a few of our meetups in the future to promote something. So to promote New Media Europe or anything else, we could perhaps give away a limited amount of free tickets to a meetup. But then you still face the same challenge of, are people going to use those spaces or not? So yeah, lots of challenges there. I've lost your audio again.
That's what I just said. I just said my mouth is moving again, isn't it? But you can't actually hear me. I'm going to have to do something about this. It's fun.
It is.
But the next question is, you've got some great speakers at New Media Europe. And I've had some great people on Digital Marketing Radio, but it's one thing getting people to commit to actually coming on to be interviewed virtually for half an hour, and for someone to fly halfway across the world to speak at your event and actually perhaps take days out of their schedule. So, what are the main challenges and ways you've gone about accomplishing that?
Well, it's interesting, I've looked at conferences in the past and thought, oh crikey, that looks really straightforward, but it's interesting because we had an experience this year when we opened the call for speakers. Actually, we opened it late in 2014, and we said, okay, so if you're anything to do with blogging, podcasting, online video, or social media, get in touch. We want to hear from you. We'd love you to speak at our conference. It's in Manchester in the UK. And we suddenly found a ton of applications coming in on our Google form that we'd set up from people from all over the world. So it was amazing. And we just had to go through all of these different applications and look at the different criteria. So I think actually getting the interest from people to apply and having a volume of people who are interested in your event, providing you're doing something that is targeted and that people can see that you're doing something good. So you've got to have a good website. You've got to have, good social media around it. And all of that, then people will apply. So I think actually getting the applications in the first place is not so difficult. It's filtering to find the good quality people. And I think that's the most important thing. I think if you can get 2 or 3 really good quality people on board from the very start, there's no denying that that's going to help you tremendously. For instance, with New Media Europe, it was Cliff Ravenscraft and Chris Ducker that we launched with. So I'm sure your audience will be familiar with those names, and if they're not, they should Google them because they're epic people in the digital marketing space. We're very fortunate because we built up relationships with both of those guys who are, just epic people in the online world, and we had the relationship there to work on and say, guys, we're thinking about doing this in the UK, in Europe. How would you feel about it? And we got that commitment from Cliff and Chris right at the very start. So we were able to launch and say, New Media Europe, headline speakers, keynote speakers, Cliff Ravenscraft and Chris Ducker. So immediately, there was a bit of authority there, and that helped to attract, I think, other speakers to take it more seriously, the serious speakers that you want to come over. And then obviously after that, there's the ton of applications from everyone else all over the place who are also epic people, but there's just so many of them. So yeah, it's a big challenge there, but yeah, that's kind of the way we went about it.
Okay. Well, let's segue into the second section of our discussion. So that focuses more on your thoughts on where digital marketing's been and where it's heading. So starting off with
software I couldn't live without.
So what piece of software and stop giggling away there in the background. What software do you currently use in your business that if someone took away from you, it would significantly impact your marketing success?
Marketing. Well, I would say Adobe Audition. So it's not directly related to marketing, but in a way, if someone took that away, I couldn't do an effective podcast. And our company, Music Radio Creative, that's our other company you mentioned earlier, David, that produces audio. We couldn't produce audio for people. So it's a really essential part of our business. There are other alternatives out there like Audacity and other, paid software. I know a lot of podcasters are fans of GarageBand, but I prefer Adobe Audition. And really, it's the software I've used for over a decade now. So without Adobe Audition, I wouldn't be able to produce slick jingles, produce podcasts. And I just think the tools they've got in there are fantastic. For instance, getting your podcast to hit a certain noise level so that your listeners aren't deafened or they don't think you're too quiet, all of that, adding compression, EQ. So I love Adobe Audition, and I would recommend Adobe Creative Cloud as well, because if you're a digital marketer, you probably want to do some graphic design. You probably want to publish a Kindle book. You can do that inside InDesign. You might want to fiddle about with code. So Dreamweaver is there for that. So that's my software bundle I couldn't live without.
Okay, a slightly more challenging question. What piece of software don't you use, but you've heard good things about and you intend to try at some point in the near future?
I've heard really good things about analytics SEO.
Have you? Yeah. What wonderful things.
Keep hearing about that. I hear it's a really good tool for search engine optimization. And in fact, that's what I really want. I want to pay for a tool for SEO, but at the moment, I think I've been fortunate, lucky, a little bit skilled, maybe that has a little bit to do with it, but mainly fortune and luck to hit some really good keywords in our niche. I mean, Music Radio Creative, which has been around since 2004, 2005, ranks really well for great keywords. So we're very fortunate there. We get thousands of hits a day from people looking for exactly what we're selling on that site. But something like New Media Europe or UK Podcasters, I mean, that's still relatively new. It's been around, I guess, a year and a bit now. So to be honest, I haven't really checked the SEO on that. I don't know if that's advisable from your perspective, David. I've just been writing organically, releasing podcasts, doing actually a tip that you gave at one of our UK podcasters meetups. You said, get the keyword into the title of what you're putting out there and then write naturally.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great tip. So that's kind of what I'm doing, but I'd love to take account of how we're doing. And I guess something like analytics SEO could really help. So I'm not doing an advertisement for the company. Full disclaimer: I know that you are there.
Yes,
but
absolutely. For those who don't know, I'm head of growth at Analytics SEO. So that's the tool that I use, obviously, because of that. But I also find it effective as well. But the most important thing from an SEO perspective is simply writing great content and publishing on a platform that is nice for search engines to see. So it's responsive. It's easy to crawl and it's quick to load at the same time. It is important to assist the direction of search engines and have your keyword phrase in there. But as you're saying, right naturally, and if you just try and target search engines, then you're going to come a cropper at some point in the future.
Exactly. And I mean, it's interesting with podcasting in particular. I know this is a problem many podcasters have. It's doing the audio is not so much of a problem, but then it's writing.
It is for me today.
And we had an interesting pivot because you may know a mutual friend of ours, Mark Asquith from Excellence Expected.
I do indeed, yes. He's on the very first episode of This Week in Organic.
Brilliant. So Mark has an excellent show note style. And, before we were literally virtually transcribing our podcasts. I mean, we have some fantastic virtual assistants. We have a fantastic virtual team we work with around the world. So we've got people in the US, in Canada, in the Philippines who work on various elements of the podcast. And we had our one of our VAs in the Philippines was virtually almost transcribing the podcast, but rewriting it for search engines. It was ridiculous. We were coming up with 2,000 word articles. And then we just thought, well, why don't we just tidy up that workflow, chop out a few hours from the process and, start doing something more like Mark Asquith, which if you haven't checked out Excellence Expected, Google it and have a look at how he writes show notes. And we haven't seen that much difference in, traffic or people coming into the podcast. So kind of makes me question, well, do we need to do 2,000 word essays, or is a 300 word kind of bullet point with some epic quotes from the episode enough?
Actually, it's funny we're talking about Mark because as we're talking on the 26th of May 2015, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my episodes come out once a week, generally at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in the UK, automatically. So my episode today is with Mark Asquith.
Wow, that's really cool. What a coincidence!
Absolutely. So you've mentioned some great tools there. So I'll include links to them in the show notes at digitalmarketingradio.com. But let's move on to.
I wish I would have.
So I'd like to look back on the very first day that you're involved trying to market a business online. What didn't you do so well? What do you wish that you would have done differently?
That's a good question. I wish I could have had a crystal ball in 2004 and seen how mobile responsive, tablet websites would have been the way forward. I wish I'd have been quicker on that train. But now, with the Genesis framework, which I love for WordPress, I mean, you can make WordPress responsive now with your eyes shut. Even the default 2015 theme is now responsive. So no excuses. But yeah, I wish I knew more about. Does that sound strange to say? I wish I knew what was going to happen in the future. Sounds like Minority Report or something like that, doesn't it?
You wish you would have done differently. You wish you'd been able to predict the future. That was a terrible thing for not being able to do.
That's terrible. For instance, I know we had a brief chat about this last time we met, but people will be searching in the future for where can I find the best radio jingle? Hey Siri, where can I find the best radio jingle? They won't be typing radio jingles into Google anymore necessarily. So being a bit more ready for that. And I guess having a So this all comes back to, I guess, having a strategic blogging process in place, which I think that's the thing in our business. I would admit that we do probably least well. I mean, we're really hot on podcasting, and as a result, getting blog posts released that accompany the podcast. But blogging on its own, I'm not a natural blogger, and I find that quite difficult. We've got a nice process just started with New Media Europe. Now we've got a blog that goes out every week there, a bit of content marketing to sort of hopefully get people in reading those articles, discovering our conference. But still with Music Radio Creative, we could be doing more. And I think it's just giving up that control and letting someone take care of that for you and saying, listen, you know what you do when it comes to blogging, do it for us. So blogging, I think, is the key.
It's tough because a few years ago, you could do quite a few different pieces of content because the quality probably didn't need to be as high as it does need to be now. Because people expect the absolute best now, and they're only going to get the best really if you are actually focusing and interacting on a medium that you really love yourself. So if you love podcasting, you're probably going to do a better job at it. So probably just focus on that and try and do a great job on that rather than actually get out a blog post when you don't really like writing that much.
Totally agree. We'll get someone else to do it who does like writing.
Indeed. Well, let's move on to
the this or that round.
So this is the quick response round. So 10 quick questions and just 2 rows here. Try not to think about the answer too much. And you're only allowed to say the word both on one occasion. So ready to go?
Go.
Okay. Email or Twitter?
Twitter.
Audio or video?
Audio.
Affiliates or display advertising?
Display advertising.
Facebook or Google+?
Facebook.
Online press releases or one-on-one relations?
One-on-one relations.
Paid search or SEO?
SEO.
Email contact form or telephone number?
Email contact form.
Website or app?
Both. Website.
Social subscriber or email subscriber?
Email.
And local marketing or global marketing?
Global.
So it was contact
Wipe
form.
The sweat off my brow.
It seemed to contact telephone number or like email form, contact form. That was probably the one that you struggled with most.
Yeah, I did, and I went back and I said both because I then I got to think about it after I answered, and yeah, definitely I obviously have the email contact form as the first thing, but I also think having a phone number on there is important to give people confidence and make sure it's a phone that you actually answer. Not one that rings and rings and rings. So, I've had that before. I've seen this really cool website. It's got a lovely email form. And then I just call the number and it rings off the hook. And I'm like, okay, next website then.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting thing that you said about just giving confidence. It's not necessarily expecting phone calls on that number. That people can give you a phone call, but they're more likely to trust you as a business, as a brand, if you do have that on there.
Yeah, absolutely. On Music Radio Creative, for instance, we have an email contact form at the top, and it actually says for the fastest response, use this, and it is genuinely the fastest response. We have people who will reply within a couple of hours to you, but then obviously we give the phone number, and actually that routes through Zendesk. So we use Zendesk for our ticketing. So whether it's an email via that form or a phone call, it comes into the same place.
The $10,000 question.
So if I was to give you $10,000 and you had to spend it over the next few days on a single thing to grow your business, what would you spend it on and how would you measure its success?
I'd spend it on remarketing and I'd measure it by a little tracking pixel. Is that accurate enough for you?
Do you know which remarketing platform you would use, or would you go directly on a platform like Facebook, or would you use someone like Adro or Perfect Audience to actually track it on your behalf?
Yeah, I've heard of Adroll, and I wasn't aware of Perfect Audience, but that's interesting because they kind of do it for you, don't they? So if I did it myself, would I have to choose only one platform like Facebook? Or
I'm actually using Perfect Audience at the moment. The nice thing about that, of course, is that you only just have the one piece of tracking script on your website. So you can run a campaign to different websites through Google's network, Twitter, and Facebook without having those multiple scripts.
Okay, yeah. I'm a big fan of being in control of my remarketing, but I guess that's because I'm a bit geeky and I like to look at every new feature that Facebook or Twitter are releasing. I mean, I think at the moment Twitter remarketing is huge, and I don't think many people are using it. So I'm deep into Twitter remarketing. But yeah, I mean, for instance, Hootsuite have just released, I believe, a Facebook integration now where they can manage your Facebook advertising. So they say, well, Facebook make it a bit too difficult, so we make it really easy to find the people you need. And I love those kind of services that make it easy. But I think I would like to spend that $10,000 myself, and I would probably, if I had to choose one place, I would most likely go for Facebook. Despite I said I really like Twitter, I know Facebook is really where it's at the moment for remarketing, at least in my experience, because you can do so much with it. And you know, even when you look at Google remarketing, you know, you can remarket with banner ads. I'm not sure quite how effective banner ads are. It's great for awareness and visibility, but with Facebook, you can really get people in and doing things and back to your site, listening to podcasts, subscribing to your email list, and hopefully eventually buying. What I notice with Facebook, I mean, is it's huge for if you've got an event or a promotion coming up, if you set a specific remarketing advertisement up and you really crank the budget up really high and you've got a really specific retargeting audience, like for instance, Facebook will allow you to retarget website visitors in a certain number of days or even people who've hit a certain page on your website. So when we do meetups, sometimes I'll use a tactic like that and I'll crank the budget up really high for maybe a day or 12 hours. And pretty much all the conversions come from Facebook because everyone's on Facebook. So they just say, oh, that meetup, I must go to that meetup. They click it and then that's a Facebook conversion. And then obviously I'll crank the budget down before, you know, I go bankrupt.
No, but that's interesting that you perform best if you are so targeted to a specific day. In fact, even a specific hour slot within that day, rather than actually just doing 5 days a week or just a large period of time.
Yeah, totally, David. Yeah, I mean, we did. I'll give you an example. We did a remarketing campaign to attendees of our. So we did one meetup in London at the Citizen M Hotel. That was our first one, and then we retargeted everyone who had hit that web page for when our next London meetup came along, and we just said special promo. It's going to be at this price for the next 24 hours, and we just did it on Facebook, and pretty much all of the initial orders came in through Facebook. So
Wow.
yeah, you can do things like that.
My number one takeaway.
Well, Mike, you've offered a lot of great advice in our conversation there, but what's the number one takeaway? What's the single most important step that our listeners need to take away and implement in their own businesses?
Start a podcast like yourself.
Absolutely.
If you haven't, get on Google Hangouts, get closer to your audience. So make a connection. You started, and the topic of this episode is all about one-to-one connections and meeting in person, and that magic that happens when you actually meet someone. So get as close as you can to your audience. And I think, you know, blogging sets up a tone, you know, but podcasting really, it gets that voice so people really get to know, like, and trust you. And if you can do video, I mean, I'd always steered away from video for so long, and even my Adobe Audition tutorials that I have for ages, if you watch the initial ones, you'll see that they're just ScreenFlow. There's none of me on it.
Yeah.
And it was actually Ray Ortega who gave me this tip. He's a fantastic audio and video podcaster in the United States. And he just said to me one day, he said, Mike, why don't you just flick on your webcam and, you know, have your face up there while you're doing an Adobe tutorial? And I did. And I mean, that was the turning point for me in, you know, connecting with my audience, because they were like, oh, that's Mike.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's almost more than just podcasting now, and hence for you as well, but, the brand change. I advise people to start their own show as opposed to start their own podcast, because it's about integrating different marketing methods together without it taking any more time on your behalf as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, that takes us to the end of our discussion today. So thank you so much for your time and your advice. What's the best way for our audience to find out more about you and what you do?
That's great fun. Well, I advise you to go to newmediaeurope.com. That's newmediaeurope.com, and check out the conference we've got going on the 12th and 13th of September 2015 in Manchester in the UK. If you're familiar with Manchester, it's at the famous Midland Hotel. presidents of the United States have stayed there. The Beatles have stayed there. In fact, I think it was John Lennon that was turned away from the really posh restaurant there because he didn't have the right clothes on. So, but don't worry, they'll let you in if you providing you have something nice on, I'm sure. So
interesting fact of the day. Yeah. Well, yeah, great. Well, thanks again, Mike.
Thank you, David.
And thank you, dear listener, for joining us. If you like what you heard, I'd really appreciate your feedback. Just go to digitalmarketingradio.com/iTunes and please leave an honest rating and review. It'd be absolutely glad to hear from you. And of course, it would also help to improve the rankings of the show on iTunes. And finally, I'm also now hosting a brand new show called This Week in Organic. So head over to thisweekinorganic.com to find out more. So that's all for now. Until we meet again, adios. Wave goodbye, Mike.
Bye.